People who should not be here because they are here illegally, and we have our own citizens who are turning on people who support law and order. It is outrageous how they go out there, attack these facilities, attack these agents, and demonizing law and order.
And let's move from Chicago to Charlotte. Federal officials confirmed a surge in DHS law enforcement in Charlotte, North Carolina, with agents beginning to make arrests across the city. Charles, the Trump administration is beginning this crackdown in this Democratic-led city, Charlotte, North Carolina. Should we expect the same kind of resistance and violence against ICE agents there?
Well, it's possible because it seems like the elected officials in Charlotte are operating out of the playbook from Chicago. So, look, we knew President Trump was going to be able to expand that model that we saw first in D.C. It's a model that works. It's a model that drives down crime. And it's a model that allows the administration to remove the most dangerous of the most dangerous. And so to see it expand around the country is not that shocking, and it will work. Just like it's driven down overall crime numbers in Chicago, it will also do the same in Charlotte. Look, the federal agents can enforce federal laws. It's that simple. We don't need to cite statutes or any other thing. It's that simple, and they're going to go in, and they're not going to be dissuaded by local politicians or the fact that they can't work.
Let me point out that just this week in Connecticut, the legislature really in a special session with almost no public scrutiny, passed a law that's going to make it even harder for ICE officials to go after illegal migrants in the state of Connecticut. The Democrats are siding entirely with the lawbreakers.
Dr. Tom, you're in Connecticut. Any thoughts on that? Moving forward, 30 seconds to you, sir. Final word.
I mean, it's just a horrible consequence when you have Democrats completely in power. You have Democrat governor and have supermajority in the House and the Senate.
And even worse in New York with Mom Donnie. Guys, sorry we run out of time. Charles, Michael, Borellis, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day. So Charles Marino's book, Terrorist on the Border and in Our Country, is available everywhere books are sold, or you can get his book with a free offer. It's a $30 value. Call or go online and check it out. And we also know that Democratic state legislatures in Connecticut are pushing policies that will make...
This has turned into a free-for-all here in the United States. That whenever it comes to the clemency laws of the federal government holding the authority above and beyond state and local government, it's obvious that we're dealing with a group of people that you can go back to the toilet paper shortages of seeing all the fights going on. You can go back to the COVID analogies pertaining to seeing people not willing to wear their mask and having fights on airplanes, endangering not just their own lives, but other people's lives too as well. What we're dealing with here is a society that has been given too much freedom versus communism societies that hadn't been given no freedoms. Somehow or another, we're going to have to meet in the middle, just like with AI. AI cannot repair an automobile. AI cannot milk a cow. AI cannot put seeds in a hopper and plant a field. AI cannot take a human patient with care from the front to the back and do all that without any type of human recourse at all. There's no doubt that the mechanical and the auto body industry has evolved to the degree that now you have to have a bit of computer skills, more so in the mechanic era, in the mechanic field than it is the body shop field. But still, there has to be a balance between AI and real people, because if not, this thing is going to get so far out of hand that it ain't even going to be funny regarding seeing how that this entity that I was warned about in the Bible Belt area all throughout my life. I was warned about by preachers consistently saying that it was going to be a person, it was going to come onto the scene, it was going to have all the answers to all the questions, that was going to be the solution to the world's problems. And and that this person that they basically wanted to put me in the category of, accuse me of, that this person, after 3.5 years, was going to turn on the people in revealing just exactly who this person was. And instead of this person being for Christ, this person was going to be the Antichrist. This was a concept that was preached in the Bible Belt area that so many people fed into, including myself. And now we're seeing, instead of it being a person, it's actually AI. It's an entity that now supposedly has all the solutions to all the world's problems, that all the world has followed, or in the process of following, pertaining to altering our reality. There comes a time that you have to wake up pertaining to the real world, pertaining to our real reality, that yes, AI, as far as computers, as far as software and etc., can be a good thing as long as there is a balance. If there's not a balance, then it's not a good thing. Especially whenever you have AI that's becoming so creative that it can basically run itself to the degree that it will turn on the humans eventually, one day, I believe. And this will be whenever it will put the demands down towards mandating that if you don't do a certain particular thing in a certain particular way, you'll just be booted completely out of the system, or better than that, it will eliminate you as far as euthanasia. We have reached a critical point that if our Supreme Court, if our federal courts, if our leaders cannot open the eyes up of what's going on in not just America, but the world in general, we are in a spiral that I believe is going to turn into nothing more or less than a bloodbath. We're seeing this now in our cities. We're seeing this now in various areas that, like I said all along, these sanctuary cities, these sanctuary towns, these sanctuary judges, these sanctuary states like California should have never come into existence to begin with. Never. Because it's contrary to our laws, because anytime you are compromising by allowing a lawbreaker to come to America, you're basically assisting that lawbreaker, and by you assisting that lawbreaker, that criminal, that person is committing this crime, you become accessory to the crime. How come that our prior politicians has allowed for this to sneak up on us this way? How come the preachers, the evangelists, the ministers, the rabbis, the priests, how come they did not foresee this coming around the pike pertaining to this entity that's now taking over humanity? I'm going to tell you why. Because they've been blinded. They've been blinded, they've been deceived, they've been bamboozled, and now, whenever it comes to accountability, they're still working under the pretense towards do as I say and not as I do. In other words, they want us to be held accountable pertaining to our American laws and laws all over the planet, but whenever it comes to them abiding or being accountable towards their own laws pertaining to derelict like Tommy Moore, like Tommy Thompson, like Mike Wilson, like other people right here in Weakley County that put on such of an act that they was basically the best of the best because they had elected a sheriff in the state of Tennessee more times than any other sheriff had ever been elected in the state of Tennessee. Since the state of Tennessee got created, they was under the pretense of believing that because they had this individual in there, and they kept voting him in there, that it was a good thing. And the whole time, instead of it being a good thing, it was a bad thing. People that I just got through mentioning, like David Moore, the ex-chief of police in Martin, like Randy Brundage, that recently just got through getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar, in addition to other people that I guess got caught for embezzling money or something like that, or misappropriating funds or something like that. These people should be held to the fullest extent of the law, beginning with the prosecutors and the so-called public defense attorneys. Because it was the public defense attorneys that allowed for my life to be not just scrutinized, but my life to be analyzed and demonized. It was these people that claimed that they was working for the interests of the good of the people pertaining to reformment that allowed for a Christian man to be railroaded again and again and again, beginning at the top tier of the federal government pertaining to Homeland Security, Secret Service, going all the way back into 1989, whenever they decided that they was going to confiscate an item from the ministry, knowing that according to the Bible and according to our Constitution, there's supposed to be a separation between church and state, but they still intervened towards wanting to take an item from the ministry that they had no business in taking. And now, 30 plus years later, we're seeing the consequences. That's not just the consequences falling upon the innocent people such as myself, but now it's falling upon the innocent people all over the countryside. This, my friends, is what we have to be thankful for pertaining to the politicians that you have kept in power for years and years and years. People like Minch up in Kentucky, people like Nancy Pelosi, the other people that has made a career out of deforming our way of life. These people should be held accountable pertaining to them being derelict for the benefit and the safety and the well-being of the American people. And that's just covering over what's going on right now in America. That ain't what I'm talking about towards what's going on right now in Venezuela, or other Mexico, or other banana republic, or other countries that's basically so out of tune when it comes to humanitarian rights pertaining to for their people. That's just barely touching the scraping the edge of the iceberg. So, are we in trouble socially here in America? We've been in trouble. We've been in trouble for quite some time, and the perfect storm has been building all along, and now, and only now, it has taken something like this to bring awareness to the American people. These same politicians, these same preachers are still in their power play. They're still in behind their pulpits. They're still on the benches making decisions. And they talk about anti-Semitism. They talk about Christianism that I've been going through now since basically 9 tapes went to the White House in 1988 that helped Ronald Reagan persuade the rest of the superpowers that the world was not going to be destroyed by humanity, but rather it was going to be destroyed the way that God intended for it to be destroyed. The only problem was after he got off the airplane, instead of them supporting the person that spearheaded peace and utopia, love, grace, mercy, and etc., the things that's taught in the King James Version Bible, they went against him. They went against him, beginning right here in Weakley County, Northwest Tennessee. Welcome, my friends, to the 21st century.
Was 28. Now it's 40. Some people are delaying having a family because they can't start a starter home. But in Connecticut, the democratically dominated state legislature passed a bill that will make buying a suburban home even more costly. The bill forces every town in the state, including leafy suburbs and rural towns, to allow developers to build apartment buildings contrary to local zoning rules. Dems say it's to alleviate the housing shortage and allow people of lower incomes or people with no incomes to move into town. But these towns will have to hike property taxes to pay for things they currently don't have, like sewers, public water instead of wells.
Everything's become unbalanced because Donald Trump, coming onto the scene towards being the bad news bearer, is now trying to correct these problems by adding these tariffs, and it's taking things that much further out of balance. And I'm telling you right now, we are on a course, my friends, of self-destruction if we don't awaken, and if we don't pull back, and if we don't realign what we're doing to ourselves.
You doing?
Well, good. I wrote you a little poem for this Sunday morning. Here it is. Homeowners vote red. Renters vote blue. How did this extreme law ever get through? To you, Ben.
How did it get through? From a far left progressive legislature and a governor who's moved further and further to the left. You know, look, Betsy.
Now, whenever I was talking about AI a while ago, I wasn't exaggerating because I just got a telephone call a while ago by my investigator that told me the number one song in America right now in 2025 is a country song that was generated by AI. It was artificially inseminated by AI that has become the number one song in the United States. If that's not telling you the influence that the internet has pertaining to computer software, I don't know what other illustration that you can look at pertaining to it being the number one country song in America.
Property taxes in the country. This
That's
is an
right.
explanation of what the legislature has done, the local home rule, and the towns and cities in the state of Connecticut.
Connecticut residents are really suffering under these extremely high property taxes. I'm also going to bring in Alexis Harrison. She is co-founder of CT 169, a group that is fighting to protect local zoning control and allow towns to determine the appearance and rules in their town. Alexis, your group has fought this law. Tell us what will happen to property taxes in the state and the owners of single-family homes once this is put into place.
Not just in the state, but in the country.
Good morning, Betsy. This bill takes away local communities' land use decision making, as the chairman said. This bill is actually a massive unfunded mandate. The housing growth program provision in the bill passes down housing quotas to each of our towns. We don't know any of those numbers yet, so towns really, it'll be very hard to prepare right now. But that will end up being a town burden. This will cause property taxes to go up. You'll need more school facilities. Some of our towns in Connecticut are quite small, and they don't even have full-time planning staff. So think about your town hall staff will have to go up. And, Connecticut is already one of the most expensive states in the U.S. We have a high electric rate, high taxes. And I don't think this will make things more affordable here. It'll certainly put more stresses on small landlords. It will be at a disadvantage. We're already trying to tackle these, very high.
Alexis, here's something I found in this bill that is so staggering. The bill, and this is the first state in the nation to do this, outlaws what they call hostile architecture. They're forcing towns to welcome people sleeping homeless in the parks. The bill outlaws park benches that have a divider or armrest because then vagrants can't sleep overnight in the town parks. And I'm asking both of you, what's going to happen when, I send my grandkids down with a little pocket money into town and say, you can walk around town, right? But what's going to happen when there are vagrants, homeless people camping out permanently in these towns, bringing drugs and violence and crime to these little towns? Ben.
Yeah, it's not going to help homeless people. We want to help. We want, diversity of housing, no question. But allowing people to sleep in parks, that's not going to work. It's going to, like you said, and a lot of people who are homeless, they have mental health issues. They deal with substance abuse issues, and I don't know how, allowing them to live in parks essentially where children are playing, where people like to enjoy. It's just really not going to work.
Ben, 30 seconds to you, and then unfortunately we have to go.
Lex is absolutely right. And look, we all care about trying to solve the homeless problem in this state and around the country, and this is not the way to do it. And as a result, you're going to see more and more issues arising in our towns. You're going to see more and more problems in our towns.
This is a failure from our political system pertaining to the labor forces that allowed to keep kicking the can down the road, towards not paying attention towards what was actually going on, and allowing for these conglomerates such as Walmart, Target, Walgreens, and all these other big conglomerates to come in and basically cheat the American people out of their jobs pertaining to the labor forces. And while they was feeding the American people with all these little gizmos and gadgets, these little plastic items that don't last a third of the time of what they should be lasting, in the meantime, they're sneaking around in behind our backs, going to other parts of the world pertaining to these sweatshop factories in Honduras or Jamaica or wherever in South America or wherever throughout the world, not abiding by the humanitarian laws that basically can make, let's say, Hanes underwear for 30 cents on a piece of underwear garment, and by the time they ship it over here and put it on a shelf, it's being sold for like, let's say, $12 for a pack of 8. That there's no way, because of our labor laws here in America, got the cart in front of the horse pertaining to paying people like $100 an hour that works for General Motors, if you count all their benefits and stuff, that there's no way that we can compete with countries that can make that same set of underwear for 30 cents versus $12. It don't take a brain surgeon to figure out what has happened here pertaining to how that the American people have been cheated. And I continue to go back to what President Putin has accused the world of pertaining to his people over in Russia being cheated. It's not just his people that's been cheated. It's the whole world in general. It's the whole world in general. Now, I want you to read something real quick before I turn this off, to get some sort of an idea of what I'm talking about here. Hang on one second. I'm going to try to get this to where you can read it halfway about the supremacy clause found in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. Now, that tells me that the federal tier is the tier that's in control. But at the same time, we must be practical about this and understanding that just because the supremacy clause reads what it does about our federal judges does not mean that the federal judges or the federal entities can come in and basically dominate people's lives in an illegitimate way. Now, are they supposed to dominate our lives? Yes. The federal government is supposed to have superiority pertaining to the tier clause, pertaining to the supremacy clause, above and beyond state and local government. But keep in mind, this was the very thing that was the major clash pertaining to state rights that caused a Civil War uprising here in America. And if we don't watch, though we're 250 years old now, or soon to be, pertaining to America being 250 years old, if we don't watch, we're going to go down the same patterns, making the same mistakes that our ancestors did years and years ago, because obviously the smart people, the powerful people, the people in charge has brought this burden upon to the backs of now all the people. It's sad. It's super, super sad in what we're seeing and why we're seeing it. And it goes right back to dereliction of our politicians and dereliction of our preachers. They have let this come upon to the American people.
Have a wonderful Sunday.
And to me, that's just appalling. It's absolutely appalling to think that they spent so much time and effort in trying to go after somebody such as myself, and the whole time I was trying to help the people and not hurt them. By putting out warnings, by putting out advisories, by telling people, hey, this is what's coming around the corner. But nobody wanted to listen to me, did they?
Riot erupts at Turning Point USA's tour stop in UC Berkeley, and the DOJ blames Antifa. We'll hear from a Turning Point ambassador and a man who nearly died by the hands of the domestic terrorist organization. And think tank tanking. Another fellow at the Heritage Foundation resigns after its president fails to condemn Tucker Carlson's apparent anti-Semitism. That former fellow joins us live on the show, and you don't want to miss his pretty scathing critique. Plus, Cali and chaos. From an illegal commercial driver's license scandal to a loophole letting criminals off scot-free. We're going to break down the latest controversies tarnishing the Garden State. But first, Democrats in disarray. Party leaders cave on the shutdown and come up empty-handed. But is another government shutdown battle brewing? Well,
sure it is.
You can call it a civil war of sorts.
By January.
The fallout from the government shutdown is pretty seismic. 6 Democrats join Republicans voting to reopen the government, at least for now. Here with us to discuss what's happening in the Democratic ranks, Janelle King, a Republican political analyst and host of the Janelle King Show. We're also joined by former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, and it's great to have you both. So, Janelle, let me start with you. The Democrats are kind of fighting among themselves, which for Republicans is fun to watch. But especially, the very progressive wing against the old guard. How much further do you think that this shutdown fallout is going to divide them? And was that actually the start of this, or did this start before that?
Well, I know Nina can definitely address this a lot better than me as to when it started beforehand, but I believe that it has started a lot earlier. I think what we're seeing now is just kind of the ripple effects of what has already begun.
The aftermath.
There has been a divide in the Democrat Party between those who believe in the corporate Democrat stratosphere and those who believe in the socialist stratosphere. So right now what we're seeing is that fight. And I believe that this was about this all along. From the very beginning, we saw Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries both try to defend their seat more so than they were defending the American people. And I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that. But this is not about food stamps. This is not about the American people. This is about Democrats who don't want to lose power and control.
Right. Or
Nina,
Republicans, either or.
To respond to that, but there have been calls, for new leadership among.
And they've been out of control now for quite some time.
From New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who's calling for a, quote, new generation and a change for the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, here's the socialist darling, AOC, making her thoughts known about the leadership during the shutdown.
I think it's important that we understand that this is not just about Senator Schumer, but that this is about the Democratic Party. Senator Schumer, there's no one vote.
See, that's what they want you to believe. It's not about the Democratic Party. It's not about the Republican Party. It's about what's there, and it's about the betterment of the good pertaining to survival. And whenever people mislead you in thinking that it's about something else that it's not, well, then you don't need to be listening to those people. Shut them off. Turn them off. Ignore them. This is the very thing that's got us in trouble to begin with.
Or it's me or Nina.
It's been broken all along. This is not new. So I agree with Janelle's observations about this. This is just a fistadure showing in real time in public. As far as Senator Cory Booker is concerned, he should have been saying this in 2023 when we should have had a robust primary as Democrats. But instead, the Democrat leadership sat back and allowed for a rigged primary process to happen, and now they speak up. So these folks in the Congress, whether it's the House or the Senate, for the most part, not all of them, but too many of them, they wait and they put their finger in the air to see which way the wind is blowing instead of showing true and real leadership. The Democrats, when they had...
All along, I've been dealing with stiff-necked people, and if you read in the Bible, what exactly is a stiff-necked person? It's a person that basically takes their fingers and sticks them into their ears because they don't want to hear people like me. They don't want to admit to their own accountability mistakes. But yet, no, they still want to pick on the born-again Christians. They still want to not defend people such as myself whenever I wind up in front of a judge somewhere. Is that not derelict? Sure it is. Is that not anti-Semitism? Anti-Christian? Sure it is. We're not just under an invasion. We have been invaded, beginning in 1988-89. And now it's built up and built up and built up to the point of where it is today, and being nothing but basically a Wild Wild West show.
The 5 seats may not be, but that's what they're targeting. That could shift control of Congress
Wild,
to the donkeys,
Wild
but
West
you got
show.
other states also going to redistrict, so it could be a net positive for...
In the meantime, while you got this Wild Wild West show, you're going to have not thousands, but millions of people's lives destroyed.
You know what? I think there's a common thread between what I'm saying as a staunch Republican and what Nina is saying as well. Is that this goes back to the people. Once again, we have leaders who are doing everything they can, putting their effort behind
The people don't have no say-so, not no true say-so.
Petition. And by the way, now that it's done, nobody can take their name off of it anyway. So the takeaway is that the Trump administration is willing to create the appearance of using political threats and the trappings of the presidency to pressure 3 women in Congress to back off of their calls for the government to release its criminal files on a notorious sex offender. And it did not work. Joining me now is Lisa Rubin, MS Now legal correspondent and the host of the podcast. Can they do that? And Basil Smykel, MSNBC Now.
Then you got all these distractions that they're throwing at us pertaining to things that should have been looked at probably 10 years ago or longer. Or our judges, our judicial systems, that's breaking their own laws by not validating the time span pertaining to the statute of limitations, and it's turned into a Wild Wild West show. Chaos. And what does the Bible say that who's the author of confusion pertaining to chaos? Satan. The devil and the devil's people. So whenever you get to looking at Charlie Kirk pertaining to the his book that he put out before he got assassinated, pertaining to the threat to not only the American people but the world in general of the pagans. Well, it was in 1986 whenever the United States laws allowed for the Pagan Act to come back into play by giving the Wiccans the same type of authority as the Baptist, the Presbyterian, the Methodist, the Church of Christ, the Church of God, any other formable, supposedly non-profitable organization towards making them tax exempt. So this did not start yesterday pertaining to the pagans, pertaining to the heathens that has now invaded our streets. Did you know that less than a quarter of a mile from where I live, there's an organization living in a castle over here that's called the Wiccans, okay, that are pagans, that I don't guess none of the churches locally around here even recognized until I come back and I pointed them out. Or they acted as if the entity that they was looking at wasn't an entity that was going to be concerning pertaining to forces to have to deal with. Boy, oh boy, was the church world ever underestimated when it come to allowing for such entities to come into play. 1986 is whenever the Wiccans become a state, federal, recognized non-profit Christian entity pertaining to a pagan entity that has been now in power since 1986 here in America. And you wonder how come you got the chaos? You wonder how come you got all the problems? Quit wondering. It was the ones in behind the pulpits. It was the ones in behind the black robes pertaining to their positions that has allowed for this to get in this type of shape. Beginning, coming near a neighborhood near you right here in Northwest Tennessee.
Withholding documents. What happens, though, when Congress passes a bill that is law to compel that? I think we're in uncharted territory here, Ali.
Basil, the term client list, the term Epstein files, these are colloquial terms because, as Lisa says, there's a lot of information in here. It is fascinating that this is playing out. Donald Trump's communication.
No, it ain't fascinating. It's sickening. It's frightful. It's spooky. This has become spooky, my friends. Not fascinating, but spooky.
Has ordered this or asked for this. It almost seems like there's some deliberate attempt to have this play out in public as opposed to normal processes.
Yeah, I mean, it's that call and response that Trump is used to doing with his supporters and certainly within the bureaucracy. But yeah, he wants to seem like he's in charge, that he's not withering away. But in addition to it being a very important time because we got to get this information out, it's also a very dangerous time because when Trump feels like his back is against the wall, he lashes out. Yep. There's a military buildup in the Caribbean right now, right? Yep. And we still need to see how that plays out. And so one of the things that I think Democrats were really good at in this period is saying, do not take your eyes off the ball. That there is a lot in these Epstein papers and these files, and we need to keep pushing. And that's what one side has done. And Trump's response to that has been, well, guess what? I'm going to actually use the bureaucracy in the best way that I can with all of the power and the resources at my disposal to try to push this away. So it's essentially signaling to people that I'm going to retaliate and I'm going to use everything I can to do that. But again, what's worked, and it's worked very well, is that there's so many people saying, don't take your eye off the ball, let's keep pushing.
I'm glad you brought up the military buildup on the Caribbean because I am actually legitimately concerned that we could end up in a war that nobody understands or cares about in Venezuela as a distraction to this. Lisa, can you help me with this conversation?
Nobody else cares about pertaining to the war on drugs, pertaining to our people over here dying left and right, pertaining to overdoses. We don't care about that.
Differential treatment in an already relatively cozy prison environment.
So what we understand, Ali, is that some whistleblower affiliated with the Federal Bureau of Prisons sent a letter and had communications with the House Judiciary Committee staff and specifically the Democrats on the committee, which led to Congressman Raskin's letter summarizing all of the ways in which this whistleblower said Ghislaine Maxwell is receiving unprecedented, preferential, and possibly unlawful treatment at federal prison Camp Bryan in Texas. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney has since said that several people have been fired on account of their sharing that information with Congressman Raskin. And in particular, that attorney has also said that they violated Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney-client privilege. That is not true. Okay, when a federal prisoner, irrespective of how low security or high security their situation is, communicates with their lawyers over the email system that's available to inmates, they are warned in advance. This is not confidential. We will monitor this. We have a right to maintain it. We have a right to screen it. And they expressly almost check a box saying, I understand that my communications over this email system are not subject to an attorney-client privilege.
Oh, wow.
So to the extent that Ghislaine Maxwell is saying to her attorney from that federal prison camp, let's have conversations about, for example, my commutation application, and the warden is waiting to hear from you, or they'll send my materials to you. That wasn't an attorney-client privilege communication, but it reveals everything that we need to know. Why is the warden involved in helping to prepare a commutation application for Ghislaine Maxwell? All the more irregular about her treatment. But I will say one thing. We know that the Deputy Attorney General who took Ghislaine Maxwell's interview feels as if there was information that he doesn't know, right? That there is some gulf between the materials DOJ had in its possession and what the estate is releasing to the Congressional Committee. And that gulf, and we don't know how large that chasm is or not, that is why Donald Trump is behaving the way that he is, because there's some element of this that's totally out of his control, right? If House Oversight has said to the estate, give us everything you have, here are the lists of requests that we have, and they are sort of doing so on a rolling basis, nobody really knows to what extent the Venn diagram looks like this or to what extent it looks like this. And that's why you see Donald Trump behaving particularly erratically right now, with every attempt to either push this off on other people or force your attention to a bouncing ball somewhere else, like Venezuela.
And if I could just say very quickly, this disparate behavior that you mentioned with respect to Maxwell is part of what's fueling the anger right now within the Republican Party, certainly among independents. The fact that Forbes magazine had a poll that said that Americans are tired of billionaires being involved in our politics. And if you consider the fact that the QAnon conspiracy was all about wealthy and powerful shielding themselves with respect to sex trafficking, that all this does is continue to fuel that anger and remind voters that Donald Trump is paying attention to his cronies and not to you. And that's the Marjorie Taylor Greene's point that Democrats have been making.
Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't actually moved that much. She's still been on that same issue. It looks like Trump's moved on this. Thanks to both of you. Appreciate it. Lisa Rubin, MS Now legal correspondent and host of the podcast. Can they do that? Am I saying that right? I like that. I'm leaning into the...
And, of course, let's not forget the fact that all them children, I'm going to call them children, young girls, probably boys too as well, I don't know, pertaining to the Epstein Island, are now being victimized again and again and again, pertaining to the authenticness of how things should have been handled going back years ago, whenever the United States federal government found out about these crimes. This did not start yesterday. This did not start the day before yesterday. You got to go all the way back to its original core of origin with Ronald Reagan and Mr. Senior George W.H. Bush. That was whenever the apple cart got turned over, but the vast majority of the people didn't notice it. Because why? Because they had faith in the system, because they had faith that our politicians was going to be working in the better interest towards the betterment of the good, pertaining to safety and security and etc. The American people has been so bamboozled that it's not even funny pertaining to what's happening right now. And to think that I still do not have supporters, to think that I still do not have people that's got the decency of stopping by here and saying, Dennis, we support you and we understand what you're talking about. Dennis, we understand where you're coming from. But yet, no, I got a cousin that says, I don't get you. I don't get you. Well, you know why people don't get me? because they don't want to get me, because they don't want to look at reality. It's kind of like my ex-wife, my first wife that I had, pertaining to the woman that birthed my child, my son, my only child. Whenever I was down at Memphis about a month or so ago, I questioned her about did she ever make contact with the authorities in Oklahoma in getting the police report or the examiner's report and finding out just exactly what their opinion was about whose fault it was, or whether or not our son had something in his system that wasn't supposed to have been there, whether or not he was asleep, whether or not he was distracted, whether or not the brakes on the unit that he was driving, a concrete truck, pumping crane truck that weighed about 60,000 pounds, that's supposed to be examined and inspected once every year and have a little sticker put on it, or every 2 years, of whether or not they have done proper research in finding out the truth pertaining to our son's death. She said, I don't want to know. You don't want to know about your own only son's death and what caused it and what could have been prevented if things would have been handled properly? You'll be surprised at the millions of people in this country that just don't care. Or they're scared of the truth and they don't want to have no part of it. Their reflection is, I don't know, I don't want to know, out of sight, out of mind, leave me alone, I'm dealing with this the best way that I can, and go from there. Well, you know what? I've always been told that mistakes or lessons not learned will be repeated. You know why they'll be repeated? Because somebody didn't take enough interest in dissecting, analyzing, and figuring out what happened, why it happened, when it happened, where it happened, the motives in behind it happening, and trying to figure out, there have been a better way to have done this? You know, they claim that Winston Churchill, which is supposed to have been a top-notch military advisor, they claim that he actually put a great deal of thought into the American Civil War. And when it was all said and done with, you know what his final analogy was? It was the perfect storm. In other words, he said that the American Civil War could not have been prevented. You know what? I disagree with Winston Churchill. I believe that the American Civil War could have been prevented if people would have taken enough time to have looked at what was going on during the time that it was going on and dissected the problem and said, hey, wait a minute. Can't we do things in a different form other than pull out our guns and go to massacring each other? But they wasn't willing to do that. Now the $64,000 question is this: are we going to go down the same endless doomsday path that they did? Once more, lessons will be repeated until they are learned. How do you learn your lesson? You take it, you analyze it, you dissect it, you cut it up in little bitty pieces, and you look at every entity about whatever brought that problem on to begin with, and you say, well, this is what happened here, or this is what they didn't do that they should have done, or this could have been prevented if they would have just listened to each other over here. There has to be some sort of practicality whenever it comes to the problems that we're facing right now, not just in America, but throughout the world. There has to be. If not, we are doomed.
Last year, Elon Musk posted, quote, delete CFPB on his X social media platform. It's plain to see why Musk and others want to muzzle this consumer watchdog. At the end of the day, the CFPB helps correct the power imbalance between lenders with all their resources and their teams of lawyers and you, the consumer. So joining me now is someone uniquely qualified to speak to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Richard Cordray. He was the first director of the CFPB from 2012 to 2017. He's the author of Watchdog, How Protecting Consumers Can Save Our Families, Our Economy, and Our Democracy. Richard, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here, Ellie.
Richard, I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked you for 14 years, and I asked Elizabeth Warren before you. Explain to me how you can be on the wrong side of the CFPB. I totally get that you can say it can run better and it can do certain things and it needs to be adjusted, but this is a bureau that was literally invented to protect people from the scammy behavior of lenders.
Look, when you're on the other side from the CFPB, it's usually because you're in the tank for financial companies. And when Elon Musk first came in during the transition, he had a conflict of interest. There were issues in front of the CFPB involving his companies. And so he was intent on shutting the Bureau down. They also just are ideologically opposed to protect.
And I'm going to say this pertaining to a conflict of interest. Whenever I was up in Kentucky, Tree County, Kentucky, Miss Flemings was a public defender, and her husband worked for a judge in the juvenile sector, and they would not let both of them work in the same county together. Why? Because they seen that as a conflict of interest. There has to be practicality whenever it comes to common sense laws. But even at Miss Fleming's telling me at first, Dennis, you haven't done nothing wrong. What they're doing to you is basically double jeopardy. She went ahead and let that department up there in Tree County, Kentucky, that started out on a federal entity pertaining to a federal park called Land Between the Lakes, over exceed her proper authority and her better judgment, to the degree that she sat back and allowed for me to go through what I went through, and basically took almost a whole year out of my life over 2 non-threatening, apologetic type telephone calls that was in the span of approximately 90-day period. One went directly to the law enforcement agency in LBL, and the other one went to a Gary Hawkins that his wife worked, Lisa Hawkins worked for the dispatch of law enforcement, and that was an inside plot from the get-go pertaining to how they drug me out of the state of Oklahoma and literally stole almost a whole year out of my life. But as I put out these advisories, as I put out these warnings, as I put out these videos, I get no support. I get nobody to listen to me. It's almost like I'm speaking to this dog over here. My dog Jack. I know he can't understand a great deal of the English language. So it would be the same thing if I was outside speaking to a tree. Why? Because I get back negative results. And you may say, well, how are they negative results? Well, Christ said that either you was for him or against him. Those that was for Christ could not be against Christ. There is no other leadway other than either forward or backward or right or wrong. And that's the part that a great deal of people has been bamboozled about.
Wait for crackdowns.
So it's not getting worse. It's done gotten worse. And I'm afraid that it's going to continue to get worse if we don't have cooler heads to prevail in sitting down, analyzing these situations pertaining to these, not only politicians that's derelict, but the people in general. And I've said all along, it's difficult, not impossible, but it's difficult to vote the people off the island that are in control of the island or that owns the island. That's what we're dealing with in America right now, pertaining to the problems that now are merging every day because of AI, which has been a good thing towards bringing transparency to what has occurred. But if we don't learn from our lessons and change the direction in the path that we have taken that's got us in this shape to begin with, guess what, my friends? We're just going to turn right around and continue to make the same mistakes. And I use the analogy towards a dog chasing after its tail. It's going to be moving, but it ain't going to be going nowhere. That's kind of like a dog chasing after a car. Okay, you're chasing after a car. Maybe you're getting some exercise. But what are you going to do after you catch it? What's the dog gonna do with the car after he grabs a hold of the bumper going down the road doing 20, 30, 40 miles an hour? It's in vain. It's futile. And that's what the American people has turned into. They have turned into a futile society that things is only getting worse instead of getting better. Like I said, looking at the 2-tier, 3-tier, multiple-tier authority situation. The supremacy clause that is found in Article 5, I think it's 5, V1 of the U.S. Constitution, establishes that the U.S. Constitution, federal laws, and treaties are the supreme law of the land. Now, even that can be taken out of proper perspective pertaining to abuse of power. That's where I'm coming from on all this. So unless we're willing to sit down and look, discuss, talk, analyze, kind of like my son taking his police report and the theology report and analyzing them and looking at them together, you're never really going to, and I promise you, I will get those reports. It may take me a year from now to get them, but I will get those reports because it is my son, and I got the right to analyze what went on in my son during the last few minutes of his life, knowing that he was trying to make contact with me within 12 or 13, 14 minutes right before he had the initial accident. It was almost like it was a setup job. Now, I did talk to my son's employers that he was originally employed by there in Huntsville, Alabama, but I haven't yet to talk to the construction crew out of Horn Lake, Mississippi, that basically was doing a side job. Basically, my son was moonlighting by going and getting this piece of equipment for these people and trying to identify why in the world would they have ever put my son on an assignment knowing the dangers involved in doing it. But I will. I'll talk to him. And if I can't talk to him in person, I'll talk to him in other ways. And if I have to, I'll take him to court to find out what's going on. There are ways to make people sit down and negotiate and talk to you, even if they refuse to. There are ways of getting to the bottom of what has happened and what is happening.
Them as unnecessarily cruel and disgusting. Last week, he ordered ICE officials to improve conditions at the facility. And for months, activists opposed to President Trump's immigration crackdown have protested outside that facility and are often met with aggression by officers. On Friday, a group of faith leaders planned a demonstration outside the Broadview facility. About 300 people showed up to sing songs and pray. But chaos soon erupted. Witnesses told local news that the protesters started moving from their designated area, and the officers began to push back. Law enforcement started clashing with the protesters. You can see here police shoving the crowd back. Several officers then wrestle a protester to the ground to cuff them. Behind them, a group of officers, these are faith leaders, by the way, a group of officers continue to shove the crowd, some using their batons and their shields to jab at the protesters. Here you can see a line of faith leaders, many in clerical collars, linking arms as officers push them back. And in this video, you can see multiple protesters being held on the ground as others are led off in handcuffs. 21 people were arrested. Witnesses say about 15 were members of the clergy. One of them was the Reverend Michael Wolf. He's a Baptist minister seen in these pictures being held to the ground by officers. In this next clip, you'll hear Reverend Wolf, while pinned to the concrete, explaining why he was there in the first place.
This is wrong. I'm here because there's torture in that facility. It's a concentration camp, and because my conscience calls me to do it.
2 police officers were injured during the confrontations. In a statement, the mayor of Broadview blamed the chaos on, quote, out-of-town protesters. Chicago's not unaccustomed to violent tactics by federal law enforcement. In fact, in October, a federal judge reined in some aggressive crowd control tactics being used by ICE and Border Patrol in the city, restricting their use of pepper balls and tear gas. That might have been one legal setback for Trump's federal takeover, and there have been others. But it still hasn't stopped the administration from invading other American cities, sending in federal officers, often against the express wishes of local leaders and communities, to carry out Trump's mass deportation agenda. Just yesterday, Border Patrol was deployed to Charlotte, North Carolina, and began making arrests around that city. One popular bakery closed business to protect its largely immigrant customer base. Congregants of a church scattered after federal agents descended upon them and detained one of their members. One man, a Honduran-born American citizen, we talked about this yesterday, an American citizen, had the window of his car shattered by immigration officers. And many Charlotte residents showed up to protest to support and protect their neighbors. Other cities, particularly those led by Democratic leaders, are bracing for Trump's next move. According to the New York Times, leaders in New York are preparing for a potential National Guard deployment here. Trump has threatened New York before, saying he'd send troops in to clean up the city if it elected Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani. Now that the people of New York City decisively elected Mamdani as their next mayor, tension is high as the city waits to see if the president will keep his word.
Which would be nothing but another chaotic showdown that's going to happen that will be a disgrace to the citizens of New York. This is getting out of control. This is out of control. It is setting itself up towards the perfect storm, and I continue to keep saying that again and again and again, but yet no, I still don't see a movement here in Northwest Tennessee. See, there was already a movement in Northwest Tennessee, beginning with the elders, beginning with the senior citizens that most of them now is probably dead or on the point of dying. That was a resistance of this movement that began in myself, the founder of the Jubilees Jesus Christ Windmill Ministries ministry, spearheading the message of peace, love, utopia, grace, mercy, and etc. Well, now, 30 plus years later, look where it's evolving to. And to think that I come back to Northwest Tennessee and people like Tommy Moore and other judges and other law enforcement agencies was sitting back and allowing for my brother and I to basically be the community punching bag is a disgrace to our laws, is a disgrace to the American sovereign citizens of this great nation. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Saying Haitians eat cats and dogs.
Right.
It's because this is our entire democratic project, small d democratic project, and we should all care what happens to our neighbors, whether they are documented or undocumented. And I think that's the larger point that so many Republicans are missing, and people who are just like, well, you know.
I truly believe that, and I've said this before too, you can document me and remember it if you want to. If my brother and I, instead of us wanting to put up a veterans or a homeless shelter or a recovery shelter for our veterans, we would have been better. We would have got a better response in this particular area if we would have opened up a bar or a nightclub. I've said this before, that various neighbors around here that call themselves neighbors, and I ain't talking about the immediate people that I can pick up a rock and throw and hit their house at, but I'm talking about, in generally speaking, in Northwest Tennessee, wanted to sit back and turn this into a show. They was being entertained by it the same way that they was being entertained back in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s whenever our family was being abused by a maniac that had a very sick problem of war scars coming out of World War II with post-traumatic stress disorder. But the people didn't care. The people did not care what was happening to James Robert Jackson's family or what was happening to his wife, Betty Joyce Jackson, that it used to be a Jordan. Didn't care. So whenever you have a lawlessness society, basically out of sight, out of mind, and as long as it's not happening to them, we don't want to be involved. You have a recipe for disaster, and that's what's happening now to the great people in the great nation of America. and it's sad.
They don't even need to know in advance. On Canal Street, hundreds of New Yorkers poured out to say, get out of here. So I'm not sure ICE knows what they're going to get into if they come for New York.
I want to go back to comparing this to the civil rights movement, because I remember when those two legislators recently in Tennessee, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, got ejected from the legislature for fighting for gun control. Someone commented they're just doing this for the press. And I remember Reverend Al telling me, of course we were always doing it for the press. That's the only reason anybody else knows these things are happening, because the press shows up. You don't need the press now. Just people with phones show up and record this. This is important. What Brad just said, when Americans show up and take their phones out and demonstrate what's going on, this is how change happens.
Absolutely, Ali. And you remember one of the chants from the civil rights movement was, the entire world is watching.
Right, that's right.
And, when we think about sort of photographers, Gordon Parks and so many other photographers who took these images and exported them, not just across the country, but to the world saw what
they saw dogs, they saw fire hoses.
Exactly what this country was doing to its own citizens, its own African-American patriots.
In 2018, I got a Santa Claus suit and went up to the Capitol building shortly after Thanksgiving. And I was identified real quick in who I was. And I was told that my behavior better be on the most upstanding agreements. If not, I would be thrown out of the Capitol building and possibly put in jail. And basically, the only thing that I was doing was sitting around, allowing for people to look at the Santa Claus suit that I was wearing, but at the top of my hat said, "Me too." Indicating not just that it was happening to me too, pertaining to on an individual level, pertaining to being violated, but Christmas in general, that represents Christ. Me too. This started in and during the Me Too movement that basically come about right before COVID come into play. Now, since COVID has come into play, we have seen things basically go sideways in every level imaginable, either from toilet paper vandalism, wars, to medical mask mandates and people not wanting to do that. This is turning into a wild, wild west show. And if a person that gets a hold of this video can't observe this and see this for what it is, then obviously they're kind of like my ex-wife of my only firstborn, that don't want to know what's really going on. In other words, they're living in a deformed reality or a make-believe reality, kind of like Mary Poppins. They're living in a distorted reality to the degree that they don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know what actually is occurring or why it's occurring or the purpose for it occurring. Like I said, when it comes to AI pertaining to smartphone technology, I'm glad that we have smartphone technology up to date to be able to document these things and put out our messages to the world pertaining to our First Amendment right. But there has to be some sort of a balance, because I guarantee you, artificial intelligence ain't going to be able to milk cows. Artificial intelligence is not going to be able to pack groceries. Artificial intelligence is not going to be able to process the food that puts it on the shelves for us to be able to eat the groceries. Artificial intelligence is not going to be able to fix and repair cars. Artificial intelligence is not going to be able to do the things that the human resources do on a day-to-day, everyday level. So there has to be some sort of balance. And we're not seeing that right now. We're not seeing that politically. We're not seeing that spiritually. We're not seeing that socially. We're not seeing that emotionally. We're not seeing that on other levels that has turned this into nothing more than a Wild Wild West show.
American collective experience. And so that's a level of cruelty that was promised The first time and the second time. That's the level of cruelty that Kamala Harris walked us through in her campaign, saying this is what Donald Trump is saying he will do, because we've heard him say it out of his own mouth. So there's so many people still pearl clutching, like, how did we get here? We got here because he told you that's where we're going.
Yeah.
And so now it's going to take a lot more people who've been on the sidelines, a lot more people who don't think that they have some sort of investment in getting us on the other side of this cruelty. The same way with the civil rights movement.
It's regular people who had to.
It has to take regular people who are just like, well, I don't really feel like it has anything to do with me. It absolutely does have to do with
That's a good point. Well, thank you to both of you. I appreciate it. Christina Greer is an associate professor of political science at Fordham University and the author of Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Brad Lander is the New York City comptroller.
Black ethics. It's kind of like, whenever people hear of what's going on down in South America, possibly a major conflict going on down there, pertaining to different countries in South America, people will say, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That ain't got nothing to do with us. Well, it may not right now, but eventually, let's say they was to all bind together, and let's say Mexico went along with them and they decided to come to America and invade us. And don't say that that couldn't happen. And whenever you get to looking at the population rating pertaining to how many people's in Mexico and how many people's in South America, I guarantee you it'll outweigh the people in America probably by 3 to 1. And I'm just throwing that out there. I really don't know what the population. I can ask Google real quick and see what Google says. What is the surmised population in South America and Mexico combined together? Let's see here what the census says. Estimated population in South America in 2025 is approximately 438,000,000. The estimated population in Mexico, 131.9 million. So you got 4 plus 1 equals 5. 3 and 3 equals 6. Basically, almost 600 million people. Think about that. You got 600 million people between those two countries down there. That's bordering neighbors to the United States. Now, how many people do you think is in the United States? I'm going to say on average, probably about 400 million. Let's ask. How many population-wise is in America, census-wise? Let me ask it again. What's the population in America pertaining to the census that has recently been taken in 2025?
Here is information from Worldometer.
Worldometer says there's 347 million people. So that means we're automatically outvoted by about 300 million people. Now, getting back to what I was saying a while ago, towards, well, this ain't got nothing to do with us. Well, it may not have nothing to do with you right now. But eventually, coming near a neighborhood near you, because the world has shrunk so tinily and timely because of AI and because of social media, smartphone technology, whatever goes on in Europe or Australia or Canada or Mexico or Russia or any other part of the world will have an effect on you in some form or fashion. So if you want to continue to take your head and stick it in the sand like an ostrich and say, well, out of sight, out of mind, I'm doing just fine right now, I don't have no business in doing any research or becoming involved in this particular problem, well, continue to keep convincing yourself of that, and you're going to see these problems only escalate, and eventually it will be coming near a neighborhood near you that will affect your life. And if it don't affect you directly, it will affect you indirectly pertaining to the people that you care about, your loved ones, your neighbors, etc., etc., etc. Folks, we're going to have to wisen up, because if we don't, we're doomed. If we do not We are absolutely 100,000% absolutely doomed. And if that's the path that people want to take, well, then so be it. There ain't nothing I can do about it.
7 years later, Trump is threatening to send troops to, you guessed it, Nigeria. MS Now's Inez de la Cuetara explains the situation.
President Trump now picking a fight with Nigeria over what he claims is the persecution of Christians by militant groups there.
We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns are blazing.
Trump not ruling out sending American boots on the ground and threatening to suspend all aid and assistance to Nigeria.
Do you envisage U.S. boots on the ground? Yes. Could be. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen. It's a mess.
But the Nigerian government flatly rejecting allegations of a Christian genocide sanctioned by the government. A spokesman for the Nigerian Foreign Ministry telling us Muslims, traditional worshippers, atheists are also being killed, not just Christians.
There is nothing like a Christian genocide in Nigeria. For people who have followed the crisis, the Boko Haram crisis, right from the beginning, they were indiscriminate with their targeting, both Christians and Muslims.
Nigeria's population is evenly split between Muslims and Christians. For decades, Islamist extremist groups like Boko Haram have devastated communities across Nigeria's northeast. While many of them are Christian, experts say the group targets people of all faiths in its push for the creation of an Islamist state, as well as access to land and water. In April, Nigerian officials warned Boko Haram was making a comeback. President Trump appearing to respond to a narrative being pushed by evangelicals. In October, Texas Senator Ted Cruz praised Trump for designating Nigeria a country of particular concern, writing in a statement, "I have fought for years to counter the slaughter and persecution of Christians in Nigeria."
I can assure you the President of the United States is watching this situation unfold very closely, as is our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Nigerian officials telling us they would welcome U.S. assistance to fight extremist groups, so long as that help does not undermine the country's sovereignty, pointing instead to support that could include intelligence sharing or technical assistance, not boots on the ground. And some worry the move could play right into the hands of religious extremists.
To say you're carrying out military strike or military operation in Nigeria simply to protect one religious group, the Christians, it is counterproductive. Rather, it will stoke religious violence. They could simply say, yes, we've gotten the attention of the West, we've gotten the attention of the US, so now let's ramp up attacks against Christians.
Inez de la Cuetara, MS Now, London.
And we'll be right back.
Now, I do want to make a comment on that regarding what recently just got through happening to Jamaica. I think it was the country of Jamaica that recently just got to being hit by a major hurricane that exceeded winds above and beyond anything ever recorded that ever hit that island to begin with. Whenever occurrences like this happen, either on a natural level or an unnatural level pertaining to a man-made level, it automatically strains the resources in that particular area. We have seen it in pockets over here in America, regardless whether it was fires, floods, hurricanes, or whatever. Now we're starting to see these man-made entities that's going to be just as bad, if not worse, pertaining to approaching these situations in the wrong way. As the resources get strained, regardless whether it happens by the forces of nature or the forces of man, people's opinions, people's attitudes, people's lifestyles change. And you will see the most wickedest and the most horriblest things come out of humanity during the time of a crisis like this. You'll see the good come out of them, but you'll also see the bad come out of them. And I know this from personal experience because I wound up going down to the Gulf Coast whenever Katrina hit in late 2005. And I stayed down there for almost a year, in the year 2006, doing humanitarian work and helping with FEMA and the Corps of Engineers and helping debris removal and etc. That during the time of that crisis will either humble or it will harden. One or the other. And if you don't watch, the people that gets hardened will make things twice as bad on the people that's already been affected, pertaining to the resources being strained. And I guarantee you right now, if you was in Jamaica and they found out that you had a candy bar in your pocket and you let the wrong person know about it, it could very well cost you your life. Now, friends, if this is the type of environment that you are glorifying or that you are looking forward in experiencing, or your family or your loved ones or your friends experiencing, continue to keep your hands under your behindies. Continue to take your head and bury it in the sand like an ostrich. And I guarantee you these problems will be coming near a neighborhood near you. You may think that you got a pocket full of money. You may think that you got the tiger by the tail, man, and you ain't got a worry in the world. Got your house paid for, got a couple vehicles, got a nice bank account, got a nice nest egg. But I promise you, you may be one of the last to be affected by the terrifying effects that's going to follow. But eventually, you will be affected too. I don't care if you're a judge. I don't care if you're a prosecuting attorney. I don't care if you're a counselor. I don't care if you're a marshal. I don't care if you're a United States whatever. The people that goes through these extremes. Whenever I was down in Gulfport, Mississippi, I seen the very same people that was making well over $100,000 a year in the year 2005, standing in the same food lines, wanting to get assistance, the same as the poorest of the poor are the most unfortunate in that area. So if you don't think that this will affect you, continue to do what you're doing, which is basically doing nothing. Because what I've seen out of the material that I put out here in Northwest Tennessee, I've seen nothing. And by me seeing nothing, I'm seeing a negative reaction to the material that I'm putting out to the world. And you know what? It takes time. It takes effort. This is my work towards analyzing the things that's going on in the news. I basically had to become a news buff, a news guru, in identifying the problem that's going on, not just here in America, not just here locally, but all over the world. And as I put out this material, as I do this work, I get back negative responses. I get back negative reactions. So at the end of the day, listen to me carefully, because I'm fixing to cut the video off. At the end of the day, ultimately, the people that will be at fault will be those that could have initiated the proper movement coming from the Jubilees, Jesus Christ, Windmill Ministries, but chose not to. Not only going back 30 plus years ago, that chose to keep quiet, out of sight, out of mind, but those today that get a hold of the same material that still does not want to participate or support the work coming from this ministry. Good luck to all of us. Good luck to each and every one of us regarding the situations at hand, because I promise you, if it has not affected you yet, depending upon where you live, depending upon who you are, depending upon your circumstances, if it has not affected you yet, it will, either directly or indirectly, in some sort of form or fashion. And that, my friends, is the gospel. And you can paint it up, you can dress it up, you can camouflage it, you can do whatever you want to with it. Come on, Jack. But eventually, it's going to come home. And whenever it comes home, it's not going to be pretty. Come on, Jack. It's not going to be pretty. Matter of fact, it's going to be just the very opposite of pretty. It's going to be very ugly. And it could very well be lethal, deadly, in the things that I'm talking about as we get further and further and further into this. Now, I wanted to come outside to show my viewers real quick. I was out here in the yard last night. I had spotlights going up until about 9 o'clock at night. I finally got to come in. I was out doing some work. I've recently got some mulch that I was going to redo my flower beds. And because of the surrounding circumstances and me trying to get over a operation that I had last year on my left ankle, I went ahead and took the initiative towards going ahead and beginning my project out here. That I've got now the ground pretty well laid back. I'm gonna have to go in and probably level it just a little bit more before I had to wet it down. But eventually I'll put this red mulch here down to be able to get my flower bed halfway done up right. And I thank God that He's given me the ability and the sense to not only deal with my personal problems pertaining to me recovering from my operation, but also trying to recover from my son's death about 2.5 months ago, or a little bit over. And you know, whenever it comes to a one-man pony show towards trying to juggle all these balls at the same time, sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it can be challenging. But I just thank God that He has given me the ability to maintain the same direction that I've always been in trying to establish love, grace, peace, mercy, the things that the Bible talks about that no one at that time wanted to support, and I guess even to this day no one still wants to support. And I just thank God that He has given me the fortitude and the zeal of pressing on and not giving up hope on not only myself, not only the ministry that God gave me to help to orchestrate, but in not giving up on the Christian society here on the planet. I just thank God that God has been merciful unto me as a sinner, saved by grace. And I just pray for each and every individual out there coming from the Purple Heart Dragon Memorial here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. And I don't know where Jack went. There he is, way down there. He loves it out here. He loves the country. God bless America, God bless our troops, and God bless our endeavors towards which way that we go from this moment on.